Yeah, I think, is this good? Yeah? Okay. Like Jesse said, my name is Alanna Grady. This is my first year in the MFA program in nonfiction at NAU. I'm from Massachusetts, so I'm enjoying my first semester here in Flagstaff. I don't usually like to start writing with any sort of disclaimers, so this is not a disclaimer, it's just a heads up. There is some language in this piece that might be offensive. That's just a little bit of a heads up. Something else that's in this piece that might be a little bit more offensive for this crowd is the math. So there is math here, as well as some harsher language. So here we go. This is called Signs of Physical Change. 1. Fill a pot with water. Set it on the stove to boil. Wait for bubbles to form. The most noticeable trait is the green. As a visitor, I hadn't noticed, but now that the house is my responsibility, I do. The fern-colored siding out front, the olive living room couch and matching blanket laid across it. The walls of the living room are much more vivid, so green that they are almost alive. On them hang pictures of nature in thick black frames, a tree trunk, rock structure, river foam, all in black and white, all looking as though they have been transfixed. They are stoic, static, frozen in time. The owners of the house are in Italy, so I am watching their property and their dog for 9 days. The house is one of those large old structures with 2 floors and an attic, the date of its construction on a plaque outside the front door. I'm not used to so much space, all those windows and doors to be locked. It takes some getting used to. I spend a lot of time looking for the things I've lost. The dog sleeps beside me. It is easier to live in one room. Maybe that is why he decides to stay. It's something we've imagined in our future, something we role-played when he moved into his own space about a month ago. A couple living together, a couple playing house. I work during the day, he works at night. It feels good to have company. It feels good not to be alone. So he stays. In the middle of the night, he enters the room. I feel his hand on my shoulder. He shakes me awake. Do you love me? Do you love me? Tell me. Yes, of course I do. Doesn't seem like it. It's late. I'm tired. I want to sleep. So do I. It's not always about you. 2. Salt the water. Like salt poured into water, dissolving is an example of a physical change. I saw you tossing your hair again. What does that even mean? You were making eyes at him. Who now? You tell me who. You were the one who was doing it. I don't know what you're talking about. You're lying to me. You always lie. How? You tell me. Notice the change in water levels in the pot on the stove. Notice how water has transformed into steam. This is a physical change. This is also a change from liquid to gas, a change in the state of matter. Consider the meaning of that word, matter. Scientific definition, stuff that takes up space. English definition, noun, something you think about, act upon, talk about. English definition, verb, to be of importance. Notice that this is not important as an adjective, but in action. There is an idea of presence, being. I don't think we often think of matter as an action. You know better than to talk to me like that. I'm sick of your disrespectful attitude. I'm sorry. Sorries matter. Over the past few months, I have learned to be sorry for the way my words are interpreted based on the sound of my voice, for being frustrated at having to wait for hours for phone calls that never come, for anger after being woken up in the middle of the night, for keeping silent, knowing that speaking would cause an argument, for content silences interpreted as fantasizing about sharing someone else's bed. I'm starting to think of sorries like trading cards to be exchanged and bartered for and collected, the kind of which I give too easily with the expectation that a return is guaranteed. Now my hands are empty. I am jealous of the ease with which water can evaporate. 3. Measure the necessary ingredients. Fractions are often thought to be the practical application of math in everyday life. One of the most common examples is cooking. I think about fractions when it comes to being sorry. It is my fault to assume that apologies are dependent pairs in which one cannot exist without the other. In other words, that they are reciprocals. In math terms, that means you flip the fraction upside down, like a reflection. Fractions are parts of wholes, meaning that something has been divided or cut into. I like to think of this as sharing, as someone else taking ownership of the quantity of a certain thing. When you are dividing fractions, you are actually multiplying by the reciprocal. I take my part in this experience knowing that it is not whole, and he takes his, and somehow the two of those things together make the experience complete. Example, 1/2 divided by 1/2 equals 1/2 times 2/1 equals 2/2. 2/2 equals 1. Note that when dividing fractions, you will often find that the answer can be simplified. But here we are, multiplying by fractions. I take half of the blame, and he takes half of the things he should be sorry for, not trusting in the balance that comes with acknowledgement and forgiveness. It works out into smaller quantities, so small that they are almost insignificant. Example, 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1/4. It is the right thing to do mathematically, but for apologies it doesn't work. We need that mirror image, that reflection. There cannot be a common denominator because there are two different people factoring into the equation. Consider, though, what happens when he insists that there is nothing to apologize for, like when he says that you're making things up because you're crazy. So you multiply. 2 times 0 equals 0. The nothingness negates the entire equation. The 2 could have been any quantity at all. It doesn't matter that it was a 2. It no longer exists. And if you divide by 0, 2 divided by 0 is undefined. It is impossible. The equation is then rendered useless because there is no end value. There is no distinguishing how many people or things there are to take ownership of the quantity being divided. There is no symbol for this expression. Most commonly, does not exist is the given answer. This is why dividing in parts of wholes do not work for apologies. This is why apologies are not tandem creatures. Consider the meanings of these words and phrases as answers. 0, nothing, undefined, no value, insignificant, does not exist. This was not nothing. Something in the equation changed. When making spaghetti, however, note that there is very little measurement needed, if any. All you need is the pasta itself and the water, the thing that changes it. 4. Break the spaghetti and put it into the pot of boiling water. Notice how the spaghetti is easier to break when it is raw. When force is applied, if not careful, it is common to send shards of wheat-enriched noodle flying everywhere, scattering. This is an example of a physical change. The spaghetti is still spaghetti, only now it is not whole. The chemical changes begin with the actual cooking process, the decomposing of amylose and amylopectin, the polymers in starch. The chemical formulas of these two starches look like this: C14H26O11 and C30H52O26. This decomposition is what makes the pasta less rigid, easier to manipulate. Starches are a type of carbohydrate, a necessary food group for energy production, running, jumping, other biological processes. Sometimes I wonder if these processes refer to love and hate. The distinction between physical and chemical changes is sometimes difficult to figure out. In this example, the chemical change is in the inside, unseen breaking. You're a lying bitch. You go places without telling me, talk to other guys late at night, won't invite me to dinner with any of your friends, and talk to everyone about me, but don't tell me about anyone. He is yelling. I am crying, pleading, wedged between the coffee table and the new green sofa. I want you to leave. Please, please leave. I'm begging you. That's why you want me to leave, right? So you can call your friend and have him come over here so you can fuck him? Call him then. Tell him you want to suck his dick, then I'll leave. I'm sure he'll be right over. Come on, tell him. I want to hear you say it. He comes over, takes my phone out of my hand, searches for a number and dials. I am kneeling, praying, begging. Please leave, just get out, please. Call the police. I want to see you try. They can't do anything. I never touched you. We were just having a discussion and you went crazy. Maybe you can call them and I'll tell them what you did to me and they can come arrest you. The dog is barking. I have never heard it bark before, not even at the mailman who shoves letters through the crooked slot in the door every day except Sunday. The dog, half pit bull and misunderstood because of it, is a pacifist when it comes to everything except cardboard, which it now tears apart between barks because it is anxious. This goes on for an hour. After he leaves, I do not move from that spot until late. It is easier to live inside one room. The dog and I sit in the big house in the quiet neighborhood, the big house with all the doors and windows to be locked. The silence of the big open house with its empty rooms now seems like a deep breath. The living room is dark, blinds pulled down over the windows from my sleeping. I am thankful for it so the neighbors can't see, though I wonder what they have heard. When the sun slides in through the slats in the blinds, it catches the walls, green like the outer camouflage of Venus flytraps, walls that swallow words, digest voices, regurgitate echoes. An adrenaline rush sounds like a chemical change, a release of stress hormone epinephrine in the body that results in a fight or flight response, anxiety as well, and the resounding paranoia that comes with it, involuntary shivers, withdrawal, clenched fists. I am unsure of these things. I do not pretend to be a scholar of science. Plenty of other guys would have hit you, he says later on, and yet somehow I'm the bad guy here? Wait until you get out into the real world. You'll get what's coming to you. I didn't even touch you. This is true. There were no physical changes. 5. Pour the spaghetti out into a colander to drain the excess water. Plate, add sauce, allow to slightly cool. A note about tomato sauce. It is said that the acid in tomatoes will react with some metals. On the pH scale, the juice of tomatoes ranks at about a 4. Lower numbers are considered more acidic. As an easy fix, cook the tomato sauce in a stainless steel pot and there will be no aftertaste. Acid does not react with steel. This is because the elements within the steel itself, along with water and oxygen, create a film that prevents reactions from happening. Water is considered a neutral substance. He invites himself back into the house to get his things, come late at night to apologize. When he does not make eye contact. He says he is sorry. I ask what he is sorry for. He says for what happened. I ask what happened because in the aftermath of the passing days, he is not admitted to doing anything. I'm sorry if you were upset, but I know you well enough by now. I know how you tend to overreact sometimes. He is in the kitchen, boiling a pot of water on the stove. I sit up on the staircase and listen to the sounds of his cooking, his singing. It is a song that I am not familiar with, but that I like. I wish that things could be different. He comes to the foot of the stairs. Going to get tomato sauce, he says, and is gone for 2 hours. He never cared much about time. While he is gone, I write splayed out on the guest bed on my stomach and propped on my forearms. At home, this is the reason why there are so many ink stains on my sheets, writing that turned into a nap with pen in hand. I try to be careful, write in pencil that can be erased because the sheets are white, wrinkled, like someone tried to destroy a cloud. When he returns, we fight. It is the same argument over and over. All couples fight. That's normal. But why do you keep bringing up the fact that you called another guy when we were fighting? Are you obsessed with him or something? Why are you just trying to hurt me? I wanted you to call him to make sure you were safe. I don't remember what happened then. It was days ago. I remember you telling him that he could come over here and fuck you and you would probably let him, but I never made you say anything to him. You called him because you wanted to, and I bet he came over here, didn't he? I told you to call the police? When did I say that? How did you feel threatened? I'm just a nice, humble guy trying to live my life and be faithful. I can't help it if you think fidelity is a bad thing. You're only 22. Your brain hasn't even fully developed yet. 6. Consume. When my brother was a junior in high school, one of the projects in his physics class was to make a structure out of raw spaghetti. I remember him on the shag green carpet like fake grass on our basement floor with the cardboard, the thin blue box of pasta, and the bottle of Elmer's glue. He was making a bridge. Some of his classmates made other structures: spaghetti skyscrapers, spaghetti pyramids, spaghetti houses. I don't think the project was successful because it had been removed from the syllabus when I took the same class a few years later. I don't know what happened to any of those structures. I can only assume that they crumbled. But physics is a different kind of science entirely. There are main laws that govern its principles, ones that are universally accepted and are not expected to change. These are the laws of motion. As one example, the law of inertia. There is some violence in the history of spaghetti that uses the ritual of throwing the boiled pasta against the wall and observing its sticking power as an indication of the completeness of its cooking. Spaghetti, once launched, will move through the air and would continue to move, the law of inertia states, if it did not meet the obstacle of the wall. Objects in motion will stay in motion. Objects at rest will stay at rest. The greater the quantity of flung spaghetti, the greater the attempt must be to make it fly. Law of motion number 2. The greater the mass of the object, the greater the force needed to make it move. There is a third law of motion which states, for every action there is an equal but opposite reaction. To me, this sounds like a scientific definition of karma. I'm sure that it makes sense in science, but I'm not quite as sure of its practical applications. For that, I return to chemistry. Consider the pot of water on the stove, set on high heat in preparation for boiling. This is in anticipation of a physical change. Though the water will eventually become steam, it is still water, just under a different name. Spaghetti, forever altered by that water, will not change its name. Transformed both chemically and physically, it will use that water as its own, then rid itself of the excess when done. It is merely for the spaghetti itself that the water exists. Before the water becomes steam, bubbles will form under a surface once considered placid. This is the first step in the process of evolution for the spaghetti. The bubbles will rise. The first sign of physical change is rising. Thanks, guys.